This is a pre-recorded FastCast, so if you'd like to jump forward to any other sections of the FastCast, feel free to use this audio-visual table of contents. Thank you. Thank you for joining. This is Morse Team's 5th EngineRoom FastCast. My name is Gabe Turk. I'm the Retail Accounts Marketing Manager at morseteam.com. And today I'm going to walk you through the functionality, the kind of how-to of some of the Analyze phase tools in EngineRoom. So with that, let's get started. Today's agenda, we're going to talk about fishbone diagrams, our 5Y, multiple regression, hypothesis testing, and design of experiments. So we have quite a lot to get through. So I'll open up EngineRoom. The first thing that you're going to see when you're inside of EngineRoom is your home screen. So you're going to have all of your different projects on your left here. I've already opened up a project or made a project for us, so I'm going to click that to get into it. So it'll do some thinking and turn around for us. So I've already uploaded some data on the left, and I've already made some studies you can see on the right as well. So I'll be using all of the studies that I've kind of already created, and also some of the data that I've already used to get us through this. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is fishbone diagrams. So in order to access it, I can either use the search bar on the top right, or go up to Analyze and find the fishbone diagram and open it up. So I'm going to make it a little bit larger so everyone can see. Okay, so a lot of different functionality with this fishbone diagram. We've recently updated it, so there's kind of a couple of things I want to touch on. The first is, if you are in any of the open spaces here, you'll see this open palm. If you click that and hold it, you'll be able to drag the workspace in any kind of way that you would like. Also, if you wanted to move any of these ribs from the fishbone, you can do that by clicking the individual line itself and dragging it to the left or to the right. That'll also work with this main vertebrae. I guess if you're just doing this, that'll justify that. So you can make some more workspace if you need to type in up here or down there, however you'd like. If you need to remove or edit any of the headings that are on these ribs, all you have to do is click that heading once, and if I want to change the name, I can just start typing. Or if I wanted to delete one of the ribs, I can click a rib. You'll see this little turnaround will appear. I can hit delete and it will remove it completely from my fishbone. If I need to add any of these inputs for any of these particular ribs, all that I have to do is find the line and click once, and you'll get this little pop-out. If I click in that box once, I'll be able to type any kind of text that I need, and I can also use this area here to change the size of this box as well. If you wanted to make any kind of offshoot from this line, you could also select the line, click it again, and another one appears. So that same kind of functionality will work across the main vertebrae, any of the ribs, or any of those offshoots from the ribs as well. So all of your inputs will go into this main area here, and if you have your output, all you have to do is click in this main box here and start typing. It's pretty cut and dry, so I won't spend too much time on this. I'm going to close out. Okay. Next thing I want to do is look at our hybrid 5Y. So if I go into Analyze, I can find my hybrid 5Y. Make this larger so everyone can see. All right. So what we've done here is added some examples to kind of help walk you through a 5Y and what you might put into some of these boxes here. If there's any kind of edit that you need to make, you just click in the box and you can start typing or deleting text. And you can also change the header names here. So if there's something that you would prefer to have instead of department or area, you can click in that area. I'll highlight it. I'll just type area. So you can change the headings as well. Clicking into a box will allow you to type in a box as well. And you can change the size by clicking that bottom right corner as well. If there are some other containers that you'd like to add that you don't see here, or there's maybe something different that your company uses, you'll see that at the very top there's an add section, and then there's also some elements that we can add. So think of the section as being an entire area where you have a header and these text boxes, and these items are going to be something that falls below a section. So if I want to add a section, you'll see that I've clicked add section, and to the right, section 8 has appeared. So if I want to change that name, I'll just type ASDFGH and change the size of that box. I can do so. I'll make this a little bit larger. I'll actually get out of the max mode. Now, if I needed to add any items to this area, I'm going to make sure that I want to click this section first, and then hit maybe add text. That'll give me another text box. Maybe add a date field, maybe add a checkbox. So regarding the way that you're going to add those items, whichever header you click, that is where you're going to be adding those items. Likewise, if you want to delete anything. So if I want to delete this item, I'll click that item and hit delete item. If I want to delete the entire section, I'll click the section and click delete section. So that's the long and short of the hybrid 5Y. The next thing that we're going to do is get into our multiple regression. So before I do that, I just want to quickly show you the data that we have. I've taken it out of the course. I'll click and slide this data sheet open. What we have is nurse turnover data. So we have a turnover percentage for a certain unit and all of the nurses within it. And then we have some independent variables or things that might have played into that turnover. So I've got a compensation delta, I have a supervisor rating, paperwork burden, the working hours per week, and the patient to nurse ratio. So those will be my independent variables, and I want to see how they relate to our turnover. So I'm going to close that data. To go into the multiple regression, I'm going to click Analyze and drop down to Regression Analysis, and you'll see that we have three different ones. So right now, since I want to do a look at all those independent variables, I'm going to click Multiple Regression, and it'll open for me. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is put some data into these drop zones. My response variable is going to be the dependent variable. So the thing that I want to see the relationship with from all the other independents, right? So if I click my data once, I'll get this pop-out menu. I can take my turnover data, put it into the response or the dependent variable area, and then take all of my independent variables, drag them, and drop them into this area here. It doesn't matter what order you put them in or what shape you make, as long as they're all connected to this independent variable area here, that's all that you're going to need. So the statistics will run. It's taking a little bit longer than usual, so just bear with me. If this ever happens to you, one way that you can rectify it is hitting refresh. It'll usually run it immediately for you, but here we go. So in the multiple regression, zoom a little bit in my screen here. So now that we're in the multiple regression, we're going to be able to take a look at a couple of things. So we'll have our statistics on the left. So these are our table statistics. And then all the different graphs that are going to populate that relate to these statistics are going to show up on the right. So if you see here, I can toggle between my different graphs just by clicking the different graph. If there's any term within these tables that you find unfamiliar, you'll notice there's blue tabs here. You'll be able to hover over those tabs, just wait a second, and then a pop-up will come up. And that'll give you a short description of what that line item is. So that might help you while you're running your analysis or going through your analysis. One other thing to show in the multiple regression tool, there is a settings tab. And the settings tab is going to allow us to hone in on specific independent variables, the ones that are the most important in regards to its correlation to the dependent variable. So if I hit settings, you'll see that there's this use best subsets method. It starts with it turned off so that we can look at everything, right? But if I turn that on and hit save changes, my statistics will rerun, and then I'm going to be able to see here at the very bottom, there are now two line items that have populated, so variables not in model. So it's taken two of my independent variables and removed them from the table statistics and from the graphs. So this will let us know that in the case of this nurse turnover issue, the paperwork burden and the working hours per week did not have a strong correlation to the turnover. So we can really just focus on how much they're paid, so the compensation delta, the supervisor rating, and the patient to nurse ratio. Those are the most important independent variables. That's what this is telling us. All right, so that's multiple regression in a nutshell. I'm going to move on to hypothesis testing. Close out of this. So for hypothesis testing, we've got a couple of ways that you could go about performing it. You'll see here that there is a hypothesis testing wizard. There's also parametric and non-parametric. All of the non-parametric and parametric tests will be contained in the wizard, but if you already know what specific type of hypothesis test you want to run, you can use this parametric or non-parametric pop-out to hand select which test you'd like to do. For the sake of this demo, though, I'd like to use the hypothesis testing wizard. So I'll open up my hypothesis testing wizard, expand our screen, and again, we give you the option here to either go through the wizard in a guided mode or in a non-guided mode where you know your way, as it says. I'm going to use Guide Me. So I'll click Guide Me. The first thing it's going to ask us is, are your data randomly sampled? We'll say yes. Okay, now what do we wish to test or compare? Well, let's take a look at some of the data that I've taken out of the course before we answer that question. So I'll pop this open, and what we have in this data source from the course is there's this fictitious sales group, and they have a certain amount of revenue that each person has generated over a certain amount of time, and that's represented in the revenue before the seminar. Now we want to see if people attending a seminar raises the amount of revenue that each person generates. So then what we've done is we have a measurement of this before, and then how much they've generated, revenue they've generated after. So that's revenue after seminar. So we're going to save our changes or click out. So we want to test are the means between the two, right? So I'm going to hit mean. So when we get to this data icon, we're going to be able to either place hexagons onto the data variable drop zone, or we can use summary data. So maybe if you don't have some kind of Excel uploaded, you can use that. And I'll show us how to do both. First thing that I'm going to do though is use the hexagon method. So I have some data. I'm going to take my toMeans seminar, and I know I want to look at my revenue after the seminar and my revenue before the seminar. So I'll just drag those on. Now you'll see that I've put those on. It says done identifying variables. So I'll click that. It asks if our samples are paired or independent. I'll say paired. It'll give us some checks, and we can either go back and change our data if we don't like that red down arrow, or we can choose to run it anyway. So I'll say run it anyway. Here we can say in the very top field, what is the difference of interest that we have? So let's say the number 3. We can also change our significance level here, but I'm going to leave that at 0.05. And now I can adjust my null and alternative hypothesis. So whatever I select here will be represented in the alternative hypothesis. So I'll change that to greater than. Hit continue. And now it's going to run my output for me. So the first thing that it'll show you, and this is what we're the most interested in, is our conclusion. And as you scroll down, you'll be able to see your p-value and test statistics, and then also a stats table with our min, median, max, a box plot, and then what assumptions go along with the hypothesis test that it selected for us based on the information that we told EngineRoom. It's also going to tell you what the assessment was of that assumption. Actually, for time's sake, I'm not going to get into the other version. I'm just going to go straight into design of experiments. So if I go into Analyze, we have a design wizard. The wizard's going to allow you to set up your experiment. Just like hypothesis testing, there's going to be a guide me or an expert mode. So I'll hit guide me. Now you can select how many factors or levels that you have. So let's say we have 2 levels, and then we have 2 factors. I've already set most of this up. This will walk you through this entire setup. So I'll leave that to you to do on your own just for time's sake. But I'll close out of that. Once we run all the way through this wizard, what will happen is it'll populate a spreadsheet for you automatically on this left-hand panel. And you're going to use that to go into the design or the DOE analyzer. From that, I'll open up my data sheet here. This is something that it will spit out for you. So it'll give you your entire setup for the experiment, and it'll give you your different factors and the levels too. So what I've chosen to do is advertising example. So we've got 2 different websites that we advertised on. We have a blue ad and a red ad, and then how much revenue came out of each of those. So the response field will be empty, but you can fill that in once you have run your experiment. So I'll click out of that. If I click that once, that same data set we were just looking at, I can take my matrix and put it on the design matrix, and then take my response, whatever it might have been, into the response area. It'll run for us. Usually these designs have a lot of information in them, so it might take some extra time to run. I just ran out of time, so what I'm going to do is open up one that I've already done. So I've taken my design, I've inserted it onto the analysis, and now I can cursor through several different areas. I have different graphs here, But you'll notice here there's a summary, model output, and factorial plots. If I hit model output, it's going to give us some breakouts of each of our different factors or levels that we've created, and then also different charts that we can look at. If I go to factorial plots, in this instance I have 3 different factors. It's going to let you look at the main effects. So for instance, we'd be able to see that website 1 had the most revenue. It'll let you look at your interactions. So when A and B are combined, or A and C, or B and C are combined, what's our output there? And then it's also going to give you a cube plot. So you're going to be able to see the interactions of all of the 3 different factors that we have. We'll be able to look at, for instance, the 6235. If we had 2 runs for these 3 factors, you're going to be able to see that this is the combination of website 1, a blue ad, and an awareness message. So we know that that combination of factors is what gave us the highest amount of revenue on average. So I've officially gone 1 minute over, so I don't want to keep anyone else. If you have any questions, feel free to stick around. I'll be here for the next 10 minutes, so you can type questions in. But otherwise, I'd like to thank you for joining, and look forward to sending you a YouTube link to this FastCast, and also an invitation to our next one that'll be coming up in a couple of weeks. So thanks so much for joining, and have a great rest of your day. Take care.